How's it going, gamers? This is Rushcode, and today we're going to talk about pointers versus primitives. I made this video because I couldn't find anything out there that talks about pointers and primitives and what the differences are between them. I understand some of these differences, and I'm hoping that this video will help some of you guys out there understand them too. So over here, as you can see, I've set up 4 different examples, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it is really important to know the difference between what a primitive variable is and what a pointer variable is. And all the object variables in Unreal Engine are pointers. And you can tell because they will actually say that it's an object reference. Whereas anything that's a primitive generally doesn't say that at the end of it. Now I say generally because there are some special cases like case number 4, which we'll get to near the end of the video. But the main difference is that primitives can copy their value to another variable, while pointers cannot copy. They can only reference the name of the other variable. So in the first test, which is to do with primitives, we're doing what I call a text assignment. So we're creating 2 variables where one is going to be a text value A housing the word melon and text value B, which is assigned the word torch. From here, it's fairly straightforward. We would call text A, which is the actual text that's going to display in here, and assign our variable value, the melon, into it, which is why we get a melon out here, while text B is going to get the torch, and so we see a torch there. However, if I stop running this code for a bit and just change, let's say I hook this up to here, something different will happen. We now end up with a sword in text A, and text B has a melon. So what's actually happened is, instead of giving text value B the word torch, we gave it whatever value text value A had. We made a copy of it and put it in there. And I know it's a copy because if you pull out a noodle from here and type the word copy, there's actually this special command which allows you to create a copy of whatever you're trying to do. This only works with primitives. If you try to do this with some sort of object, for example, like text A is a text object reference, it won't have any copy on it. Type copy. There's nothing here. I don't know what this thing does, but this is not going to make a copy. So this is definitely a primitive. So it's made a copy of that value, which is a melon. And after that, we changed the value of A to a sword. So we updated A as a sword and gave its old value to B, which is a melon, which is why when we run this, we can see that there's going to be a sword here and then a melon. And that is the end of the simple stuff. This is basically how you just do anything when you want to copy values from one variable to another. Now if we're going to this second case here, which is down here, object test, image assignment, what we're doing is assigning a color to this image object, which is this square over here, and that's a red color, so we get a red square. Then we do the same thing with image B and we get a green square. And if I wanted to change the color of B, then all I need to do is stop running this code, connect this noodle up to here, and what this is going to do is update B's image to blue. So there's no green here, and we didn't see it change from green to blue simply because it happened instantaneously. If you want to see the change, then you have to create a delay, which is what this node is here for. So if I connect this up to here and then go and change the color, it should wait 2 seconds before green turns to blue. Let's find out. So we have green, and there we go, now it's blue. So all it did was overwrite the color. And this is where things get really interesting. If I were to connect it up to this node and then do the delay, watch what happens. A's image ends up turning blue and B doesn't change at all. This is really important to take note of because what's actually happening between image B and image A is that image B is pointing to image A, and what that means is that their names are now linked together. And since we were setting B to A, that means B's name is now the same as A's name, which is to do with A's object. So if we wanted to get in touch with this object over here, we have 2 ways to call it. We can either call image A or we can call image B. So after this assignment is made, it waits for 2 seconds and then changes the first object to blue because image B is technically the same as just calling image A. And the reason B's image is still green is because this object has lost the only name that it had in order for us to get in touch with it. This name is now attached to the first object. So we have 2 names for the first object and no more names to call and get in touch with the second object. That's one of the issues with pointers. If you're going to make a pointer, make sure it's strictly dedicated to some other object that you want to change. You can't give it its own object because it's just going to lose its head and and not do anything from there. Now in the third case, this is where it gets a little bit more complicated. We're actually going to create two textures. The object that holds this texture is known as an image, so these boxes here, and I've changed their names. So instead of calling them image objects, I'm calling them texture containers. They're still known as image object references, as you can see here, and I just want to give them pictures, so hence the melon and torch pictures. So in the first bit, what we're doing is initializing or assigning those pictures to melon and torch, and then down here we are contacting texture container A, which is the first box, and putting the melon in there, which is why we see a melon. Then we just do the same thing with container B, putting the torch in there. Now watch what happens when we try to run this code again after doing a pointer assignment. Similar to what happened with the green, red, blue boxes down here, A has taken on the torch and B doesn't do anything. It just stays empty, and this is because B's container is pointing to A, so the physical container is not connected to its name anymore. That name is connected to the first container, and while putting a melon into container A is perfectly fine and normal, when we try to put a torch into container B, that's actually now container A, and so container A turns from a melon into a torch. We didn't see the transition, so if I create a delay, let's say stop running this code and create a delay right here, we will see it turn into a melon and then turn into a torch. Check it out. There's a melon, and there we go, a torch. Because getting in touch with container B is really just us getting in touch with container A. And that means we have no way of contacting the second object, which is why it's just empty. We never got a chance to assign any pictures to it. So in both of these cases, case number 2 and case number 3, whether we are assigning textures or assigning colors to these image objects, when we link up the pointers, they both only end up changing one object and leaving the other one in whatever default state it had to begin with, which seems to be the intended way to use pointers in Unreal Engine. But if this hasn't already completely confused you, then it gets worse. In case number 4, we have texture C and texture D, and we have a big melon and a big torch in here. So let's have a look at the actual nodes in here. So I've set up a melon to go into the big melon and a torch to go into the big torch, so those are just the picture assignments. And these are, by the way, textures that I've imported in here, which I'm simply assigning into variables which I can use in the image objects. What we see at the bottom here is a pretty straightforward thing. C's container is going to get the big melon, D's container is going to get the big torch. So when we run it, we get a big melon in C's container and we get a big torch in D's container. But this gets a bit strange when we do this connection over here. So in the previous two cases, we were doing pointers to do with just the image objects, but now we're doing pointers for the textures themselves. And as you can see here, it says texture 2D is an object reference. And if I try to copy it, it doesn't have a special copy command. So it's not a primitive, it is definitely an object, and it should be pointing. And that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm setting big torch to point to big melon. That means anytime I try to access big torch, like down here for example, it will access big melon. I may as well just be putting the big melon there, and it should do the same thing. And to confirm that it's doing that, I change or update big melon's picture to the sword, so it's not going to be a melon anymore. And so in container C, we expect to see a sword. Now if I run it, you can see that container C has a sword, but D has a melon. I'm pretty sure D is supposed to be a sword, but it's not. It's acting as if it's a primitive, right? Because if torch was a primitive, it's copying the value from the big melon, which at that time was a melon, and then you can just do whatever you want with it and you'll just put the melon in there. Makes sense why the melon's here. But we know it's not a primitive, it's an object reference, so it should be pointing. But it seems to be pointing to its previous or last updated value before we changed the big melon. I don't know how it's doing that or why it's doing that. I feel like it should not be doing that. But if any of you guys know, then please let me know. I'd love to know what is actually going on here. It seems that texture 2D is acting like a primitive but also like a pointer. It's very strange. But that's my basic explanation for how pointers and primitives work. It makes sense in the first 3 cases, but when we get to that 4th case, it's a little strange, and I don't know if this affects other types of variables. Most of the primitives are going to be these guys over here. I'm not sure about vector, rotator, and transform. Let's see, set it as a vector, drag it out here, and then drag a noodle, type in copy, and there you go. There's the copy command. So vector must be some kind of primitive as well. If I were to change this to a rotator and pull it out, let's see, does it have a copy? It does. Or if I were to change it to a transform, pull out a copy, and it has a copy as well. So all of these variables here are primitives, while most of these other ones here are going to act like pointers. I can't find any reference in the Unreal Engine documentation on which is a primitive and which is a pointer. But again, if you guys know where to find that, please let me know down in the comments below. So thanks for watching, guys. If you liked this video, then smash like, hit subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Rush Code out.